Hello there. How's everybody doing? Just waiting for my friend Nadine to jump on to this Instagram Live. We're going to talk a little bit about meeting ourselves where we're at, setting boundaries around that. Probably a lot more because we always just go with the flow. But first, while I'm waiting for her, I want to acknowledge today is in Canada, National Indigenous Peoples Day, and honoring them, the people that came here before us, the original inhabitants of this land, where I settle. If you're in Canada and you're not indigenous to the land, for us, the wisdoms, the connection to Mother Earth, the connection to all the elements, the wisdoms shared over millennia. Although unjustly suppressed, we honor and acknowledge you, and may we all live in reciprocity with those lessons and wisdoms and everything it provides us today to live and operate our lives from, and do these kinds of things, have these kind of conversations. Honoring, I want to just call out the lands where I settle. Welcome, Nadine. And I'm in Mississauga, Ontario. So for me, it's the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Ojibwe Chippewa. And whether named or unnamed, we honor and acknowledge you and our Mother Earth and the nourishment, the love, and sustenance she provides for us, and that connection that we have learned from the people that came before us. So, and not just today, but every day. And I was saying to Nadine before we started, on my other show with my good friend Diane McClay, we always start off by acknowledging the land, acknowledging, those that came before us, and integrating that into our day-to-day, because it is something that is easily forgotten and, in fact, erased from our history, and part of how we got here and how we are here operating today. So I want to acknowledge that and just remind people and remember, this is about our remembering who we are, and through that honoring the people that came before us. We do that, and we offer reciprocity for everything that we have and live our lives that way. So now, Nadine, thank you for joining me. So happy to see you and that we get to do this. Always usually centered around the new moon, which just passed this past weekend. I don't know about you, but I felt that a little intense, and it's in my natal sign. And so I could not figure it out for the life of me, but whatever, I always trust that we're receiving whatever we need to receive in any given moment, and just trust that even if it doesn't feel good. So I don't know about you, if you kind of felt the same thing, or what was your experience?
Yes, I felt it was
Yeah.
quite intense actually, and you always say, don't you? It's always happening, even if you're aware of it or not. And I
Right.
was made aware of it, I think,
Hmm.
actually, but that's not a bad thing. And it is that whole idea of just, yes, it does sometimes feel uncomfortable. There is a lot of change going on
Hmm.
for everybody. It's everywhere, isn't it? And it is the time. And that can be uncomfortable, can't it? Change can be something we want to avoid.
Right.
We don't like that kind of thing. So it is something that, really to embrace, and that feeling, you say it in your book, your wonderful book that I've been dipping in again. Um, just, it's really lean into it.
Hmm.
Really feel these feelings, even if they're uncomfortable. And this is where we grow. This is how we learn. And you said in your post that you put up introducing this lovely chat that we're having today about meeting ourselves where we are
Hmm.
with grace. Wherever we are, whatever we're feeling, whatever is going on, just be in that. And that is something, I take those words and I remember them. You say them a lot, and I'm really, really glad that you do, because actually it is important, isn't it, just to go, I might not like this feeling, but I'm in it at the moment,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And it does pass, but be in it, rather than the way I used to always be, which was like I wanted to rush through it to get back to happy, get
Yeah.
back to something I was comfortable with. But actually there's such value, isn't there, in meeting ourselves where we're at, whatever is going on and however that feels.
Right.
It's so, so beautiful. So thank you for your lovely words of wisdom. And in the wonderful book, this is the original, isn't it? Love Me.
It is
Um,
the OG.
and you And you have a poetry version and meditation version as well, don't you? So
Yeah.
they're all there for us, aren't they? But there's so much in there. So
Thank you
much
for that,
wisdom.
Nadine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say too that I witness you all the time meeting yourself where you're at, especially with what you're going through right now. And I just want to say,
Yeah.
like, it's not something I think you learned from me necessarily, but I like that we're talking about this, because the more we talk about it, the more common and more comfortable we are allowing ourselves just to not run away from whatever is we're faced with in our life, but to actually lean into it, like you said. And maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit more depth in a minute. But also want to bring in too, like, this is also not only National Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada, but it's summer solstice if you're in the northern hemisphere, winter solstice if you're in the southern. But here we are welcoming the sun. I'm wearing my yellow to honor that solar energy, and just embody that, and we're supported in that. And I think, we're talking about the new moon, and not really, it was intense, and maybe we can't like put our finger on whatever it is we're feeling. Maybe we can say, oh, it's because of X, it's because of this experience I'm having. But maybe we're feeling a certain way and we don't even know why, and that's okay too. That can be scary. But know that, like I said, like, I don't know what I was feeling with this new moon. I can't like put my finger on it, but I'm just trusting that I'm going to ride it out and just let it take its course, and instead of fighting it, because that just ends up backfiring. I mean, from my own experience. But we're also, not to get too scientific, but having like higher frequency energies on the planet itself than we've ever experienced before, with the Schumann resonance, like off the charts. And I don't know a lot about it. I'm self-taught in pretty much everything I do that's esoteric, and but I'm learning and I'm feeling it, and I'm noticing like it's feeling different. So people may feel unsettled right now. So I think it's a perfect time for us to have this conversation about meeting yourself where you're at, because we might not even be able to name something that is a cause of it, because I think that always makes us feel better. But we don't need that. We just need to like go with the feeling.
I think that's a really good point, actually. And again, it's something I always try and understand things. I always try and make sense of things. I always try and go, oh, that's what it is, But I am learning through change, through the unlearning, as we talk about quite often. And again, you explain in great detail in your books, the unlearning the old way we used to be, and the old things that we maybe were taught or picked up from what went on around us, to then relearning that we can do things another way. And this is a big part of what I am doing and have been doing and will continue to do, that actually just recognizing what is maybe an old habit or a pattern, something I believed before, having a bit of gentle questioning, that I use that term a lot, just having that meeting myself where I'm at, just going, okay, what's this all about, and actually being okay if I don't know what it is. That's new for me. That is new. And that is good. I don't have to name it. I don't have to understand it. Just actually, like you said, meeting ourselves where we're at and just going with the flow. That is quite freeing. Can be a little bit scary, but it is quite freeing, isn't it? Just to go with it and go, trusting. There is a lot of energy around us, and I'm getting that from hearing it from a lot of people too. And it is quite unsettling. So if you can just be at one with that, and just not try to understand too much, is a wonderful, for me anyway, as I say, a way to unlearn what I used to always try and do, and relearn a newer way to actually do things. And it is, like you say, meeting yourself where you're at, just going, this is what it is. Don't need to understand it, don't need to name it, don't need to have a title for it, sort of thing, put it in a box. It can just be, and it also can be messy, can't it? It can be messy. And that's okay too. So I really love that. And as I say, you're unlearning and you're relearning. I'd never heard that term before until I met you, and it really is, it's what life is all about, isn't it?
It is.
We don't have to stay stuck in what we learnt, especially as children, and quite often that's when we absorb everything, isn't it? And we stay in that way. So it brings me on as well to something that you've talked about as well, is about the power of sharing things. We talk when we talk like this, and also our Zoom deeper discussions that we have once a month as well, where there is power in sharing our stories, isn't there? There's always, we witness that in these groups all the time, don't we? It's so wonderful that people get so much from sharing their concerns or their statements, whatever they want to share at the time, and how valuable that is and how powerful that is.
Very
But also,
healing. Yeah.
it's so healing, isn't it? And this is a wonderful thing that we can do. And again, it's something I have unlearned and learned, because I used to be so private and think you can't say things out loud, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So learning that, but also the other side of that is it's okay sometimes not to share. And this again is our choice, isn't it? It's our power
Mm-hmm.
to, sometimes there's a time and a place where it feels comfortable to share, or sometimes a little bit uncomfortable but valuable. But there's also, you know, it's our right as well sometimes to not share. And for me personally, I sometimes will share a bit later on. Sometimes I need to just sit with something myself for a little while. And that again is a boundary I have established. And again, it's something you talk about a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, allowing ourselves some boundaries and some freedom, if you like, in that way, and a bit of privacy if we want. It's our choice, isn't it? And again, that was something I had to unlearn. I had no boundaries.
Yeah.
I didn't know what they were. I had no clue when I was growing up. So that's not necessarily unlearning for me, but just doing things a different way and learning some boundaries and feeling okay with that.
Yeah.
Is again very powerful. So, I mean, how do you feel that you always, maybe even as a child, had some boundaries and had that way of establishing that, or is it something you've
I don't know if it was boundaries. It was more, I was afraid to share anything. So I was very shy, very timid. Because of my experience growing up as a twin, was always under scrutiny. You read about that in my book. And so I tried to make myself the opposite, like invisible and not sharing. And so for me, it's been a practice of like, I've shifted that, because I've learned that how much I can heal through sharing what I'm going through, and how much my personal expression and my soul expression helps me be grounded in who I am and shifts my beliefs. And like, there's so much to say about that. But I think, like going back to what you were saying about setting boundaries around, like, there's times where we want to share and it's very healing for us. And then there's times where I want to sit with it myself for a little bit, because, you know, I just need to maybe process it or whatever. But those, like, even just having the discernment and the giving yourself that pause to, those are acts of love towards yourself, versus like abandoning like what you would really want to do for yourself. Like, so it's allowing yourself the space and the grace and that pause to say, is this something I need to sit with for a little while? Not really, you know, like, so honoring where you're at again with something specifically. And you may not today want to share that, and that's okay too. It's not about, let's get everything out there. And like, I'm a very transparent person. Like, I share a lot on social media. I don't do it so I get, you know, so many likes or whatever. I do it because it's an outlet for me creatively, for my writing, for my just self-expression, my weirdness, my whatever it is. It's a practice for me of loving myself and being okay with who I'm at, regardless of what the external is giving back to me. So that has just been my own journey. It hasn't always been that way. I'm a recovering people pleaser. So it's always been about, you know, up until a certain point, making sure everyone else was happy with how I was operating in my life, and you know how that goes. So I think it's so important and so valuable to know when to share something and when to not share it, for yourself, to honor yourself.
Definitely.
Like I said, I'm transparent about a lot of things, but there comes a point where I'm not so like transparent, because there's other maybe people involved, or for whatever, something I want to keep sacred for myself. Like, so it doesn't have to, you know, you don't have to give a specific reason. It just between you and you, why you're doing what you're doing. So do you know
I
what
think
I'm
that's
saying?
another. Yes, totally.
Yeah,
Again, it doesn't have to be a reason, does it?
right.
It's whatever you feel like, and honoring that, isn't it? And I think you said it earlier about its boundaries is loving
It
yourself. It
is.
goes back to this again, doesn't it? Love me,
Mm-hmm.
love yourself, big time. And I know that's not the only way you use the title of your book, but it is part of it, isn't it? It's
Mm-hmm.
remembering to love me, you know, and that's boundaries, isn't it? You know, when I didn't have any boundaries when I was a lot younger, I wasn't loving me. I was very similar to you,
Yeah.
pleasing other people. I didn't have any boundaries because I didn't think I mattered enough. It was like, oh, I want to make everyone else happy. That's all I focused on. And all I
Yep.
knew how to do. And I wasn't very good at doing that, actually, because I got that wrong most of the time. But that was my focus, rather than I wasn't loving me. I was not thinking about me. So boundaries didn't come into play at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I've had to establish. And that's been a lot to do with how, you know, recognizing myself and honoring myself and actually going, is this okay for me or not? And the honest truth is, when I first started to question that, I wasn't comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got more comfortable with it. And it's a very, very important way to look at things, isn't it? To just question. And you said just then, and I love it, the pause. Give yourself a pause, step back for a moment, and just take that moment to choose. You know, is this something I want to share? Is it something I don't, without having to understand it fully? It's the feeling, isn't it? Leaning into those feelings. I'm quoting you again, lean into it.
Yeah.
You know, it's what we do, isn't it? So
And
it's
you're reminding me of, like, there's kind of a reverse of this, or it just becomes like, so you said some, I don't know if you said the exact words, but this becomes like a practice because we have these opportunities where we give ourselves pause and we say, do I need, like, what do I want to do in this situation? So it's like,
yeah,
if, let's say, you have somebody in your life who presents you with something, like something they're going through, they might just be sharing it with you, going back to the sharing, because they need to just let it out, to release it.
yes,
Not
yeah,
necessarily, a lot of times our response to that, then we're like immediately trying to offer a solution, or I don't know what to say, but you know, or I can't, you know, I don't know what to do for you, or whatever. But what I'm realizing, and you know, I've had this like in real time, or real life experiences recently. I mean, it happens all the time, but just noticing when my response is to be like, I wish there was something I could do for you, or I wish I knew what to say, or whatever. But we don't have to say anything. We can just like not
yeah,
just hold space. It's okay. We've been
yeah,
so conditioned to think we have to, somebody shares something that they're going through, and we have to immediately have all the solutions ready to hand over to them. And
yeah,
sometimes we just
yeah.
need to like sit with them and be with them.
Yeah. And how powerful is that,
Yeah.
just to, like you say, hold that space, and we both have learned to do that, don't we?
Yeah.
And I'd like to say, I think we do that a lot, don't we, now with our
Yeah.
clients? We do it with the Zoom deepest discussions. We hold that space, and we don't speak ourselves very much, do we? We listen,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't offer. And you're absolutely right. I used to be one of those people all the time. I'm always trying to solve people's problems, whether they wanted me to or not. But also, what I really recognise is I've always got an opinion, and people don't want to hear that either. But I always had one, and I thought it was my duty to tell people what I thought all the time. So
Yeah.
how we can change, I still do it. I gotta be honest, but I don't do it as much, and I give myself that little pause, and I will be silent sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
believe it or not, in conversations, because sometimes nothing needs to be said. Sometimes, like you say, people just need to tell you something, and that is powerful.
Yeah.
So
And
but that is something I had to learn.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't, not to put you on the spot or anything, but I mean, I'm sure you've had that like recently, like with people maybe not knowing what to say, or yeah. And
Yes. You're
sometimes like, so
you're
you have
absolutely,
that,
yeah.
like, you know, that maybe it's not that they needed to say anything, they just needed to hold that space for you.
Mhm. You're absolutely right. And it's something, again, this is again the changes that I'm going through and being faced with this diagnosis and what's going on. You know, when I was telling people, and especially people that cared about me massively, it was hard. It was hard for me. It was hard for them to hear. And there was that almost stunned silence sometimes, and people didn't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the people that actually said, I don't know what to say. You know, I don't know. Because that takes some courage, doesn't it? You
Just to
know,
say that. Yeah.
yes, and that's okay. And my response to that was like, you know, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I've shocked you, I've stunned you. You know, that's how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, bearing in mind that by the time I was telling quite a few people, I'd got it a bit together myself. I'd given
The
myself that space, that
time.
boundary.
Yeah.
So that's coming out. So you're absolutely
Oh, I hope I didn't lose you. Oh,
just.
there.
I don't know what to say,
Yeah.
and that is fine. But also that the silence that I was met with quite often, and then I was the same. Sometimes it just me. I mean, I was with a lot of people. I was telling them face to face, so just to sit and be
Hmm.
still and quiet. Sometimes a hug, that kind of thing. But when I was having conversations with people on the telephone, sometimes there was silence, and that is quite uncomfortable. Silence on the telephone, but it's important. We need to process, don't we? We need to. So you're absolutely right. I've come across that, in recent months quite a lot with people, and it is something that I really do
Hmm.
honour, when people can share that with me that they just don't know. Because that, as I say,
Yeah.
takes some courage, doesn't it? And then again, allowing that little pause. It's fine not to know. It's fine not to know how
Hmm.
to respond. It's fine to feel all those emotions that rush over and not make any sense of them. And I myself have been through that and continue to go through that with all the process that I'm getting used to now and all the changes that my body and everything is going through. There's a lot of times, and I shared it with you, didn't I, just before we came on this live, that this morning I was feeling awful, really, really awful. And I had someone beautiful who cares for me, who I could share that
Hmm.
with. And actually part of the process, is not the only thing that happened today, but was just actually being able to say it out loud to someone that just heard me.
Just heard you.
And
Yeah.
that's so valuable, isn't it? So valuable.
It is just to be heard,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, not somebody trying to fix anything for you, just
Mm-hmm.
to receive it. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, as we're talking about this, I think one of the things, like, why we feel like it's so hard for us just to hear somebody and just to, like, sit with them in silence maybe and just hold space, and that way it's uncomfortable, it's scary, it's like it,
Yeah.
because it's like we're not. And I think a lot of it, like, I'm just, intuitively, it's because we're not comfortable sitting in silence with ourselves, because we don't ever do it, and we've
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
trained, and to just be doing all the time, like constantly doing something and never just being. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, just being, you kind of have to make excuses for just being. Like, you can't just, you have to, make up something so that you can just be, because people will
Yes.
accept you doing something different than what you were supposed
Yeah.
to do, because you're
Yeah.
doing something. But if you're just, I just want to be for a minute, like, what does that
Yeah.
mean? And because it's
Yeah.
such a foreign concept, because it's not socially valued. It's something
Yeah.
that's looked down on, to, like, be
Mm-hmm.
doing nothing. But doing nothing is actually doing everything for ourselves.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. It's so interesting, and it's something I've been faced with a lot recently as well. That doing nothing,
yeah.
and it can be lovely. But I tell you something, it makes me laugh now. It didn't make me laugh at the time. But I was sitting the other day on the settee, sofa, whatever you call it. I know it's
Yeah.
different words, and I was really feeling rotten, and I just didn't know what to do. I just sat. And I was still, and my partner Simon said to me, "Oh, you look like a rag doll sitting there," And I was literally like a rag doll. I just didn't know what to do
Hmm.
with myself, and I just needed just to be still. There was nothing to do. I didn't know what to do, even if there was something to do. I was just sitting, being,
Right.
exactly like you've just described.
And
And then I don't even know how long it was, but after not that long a time, I started to feel a bit better. So that being still, being quiet, just doing nothing, just being,
hmm.
whether I looked like a rag doll or not was irrelevant. But I was just, there was nothing going on,
Right.
nothing going on. But that's what I needed. And that is really, it's so interesting that you've just said that, because that's something I was doing quite recently, and I do it more and
and
more at the moment. I
and
do.
that's exactly what I'm talking about, like, meeting yourself where you're at, allowing yourself just to,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
it might not be what you plan to do, but
Mm.
there's always, like, a bigger plan for us. So, like, and it's like
Oh,
listening to that inner voice, because the inner voice is the one that's, like, knows what we need right now.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
we so easily shut that off and tune that out and just say, oh, I just got to get this done, and then I can go do X or whatever, or I can
Mm.
go relax. But it never
Yeah.
happens. It never happens. So it's and I think, like I said, it comes back to being uncomfortable with just being in that space with ourselves and shutting everything
Yeah.
out, and connecting with ourselves. But it's only like that initially, just like with any kind of fear. We are the scariest part is like right before you do the thing. So
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and as you step into that, and then as you move through that, and as you do that more and more, it's not so scary anymore. So it's just like
Yeah.
there's different degrees of that fear. So like just being by yourself, it might feel uncomfortable versus like trying to go bungee jumping or whatever. But
Mm,
like
mm,
there's that physical fear. But
mm.
it, regardless, it's moving through the discomfort, which is ultimately fear of like
Yes.
what's going to happen. Like if I allow myself
Yeah.
just to be by myself, like are the
Yeah.
thoughts going to rush in, or what's,
Mhm.
like, and
Mm.
so, but it's a practice of, and
It is. Yeah.
exactly like taking that, meeting yourself where you're at to like the next level.
Yeah. Yeah, it so is. And I'm so, but you've said fear, and it's reminded me there's a little bit in your book that I wouldn't mind just reading out, just a short paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about fear. Because you're right, a lot of this is fear, isn't it? We're scared of those uncomfortable feelings, we're scared of what ifs, all of that kind of thing. And we try and make that okay, don't we? That's what we do to make things
Exactly.
better. But it is that being courageous, being brave enough to feel the fear, and being brave enough to, it's a feeling, it's an emotion, and it's a good one sometimes, isn't it? But we need to, like you say, get comfortable with it, maybe. And you've got in here in your lovely book, about fear. And if you don't mind, I'll just read it out very quickly. Fear is always going to be part of our human experience. That's quite important to recognize,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it? No matter how evolved we are, no matter what strides we have made in our growth, until our time is up, until we have accomplished everything we are intended to, fear will be there, even if we think we've conquered it. I'm
Mm.
getting chills reading that because that's powerful, isn't it? And you go on to say the growth comes in having the awareness of the fear and moving forward through it anyway. This is true courage. And it so is, isn't it? Those are,
Mm.
I'm really got chills reading those words. They
Thank you
are
for
so
reading that.
powerful.
I wrote
They
that.
really, you wrote that. You're amazing. You're amazing. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because everyone knows I don't read this book the way that people sometimes read things. I dip in and out all the time. And I have read that paragraph so many times, this whole chapter of unlearning. And it really is, and connecting the dots and all the bits that you put. And, I've read that again recently. And again, it's gone, oh, sometimes it is. I do what some people do. I just let the book tell me
Guide
what
you.
it
Yeah.
needs to be. Yeah, exactly. And I know you do that.
Mm-hmm.
But that again, just wow, wow, wow. It's big stuff, isn't it? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's so true, isn't it? It's always going to be there. And if you recognize, and I think this takes the fear away, recognizing that fear is always going to be there.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, oh, okay, I'm never going to get through it. There's always going to be something that's going to make me feel fearful,
Mm-hmm.
but that's okay. And the idea is to use it, if you like, lean into it, go with it, go through it, and this is where you come out the other side.
Yeah.
And it does, strangely enough, it takes the fear away, doesn't it? And recently, again, with my recent diagnosis and all the things that I'm facing, I've been facing my biggest fears,
Yeah.
and they're not scary anymore.
Mm.
So wow, it's so
That's so
powerful, isn't it?
huge. It
Because
is.
yeah,
Yeah. And that just
this
goes
is
to
true.
show you that like this is how it works if you allow
Yeah,
yourself to go there. And then
yeah,
that's why, and I say that in the book, that it's always going to be there, because then there's the next level. So then we get
yes,
to a certain point
yes,
where we're comfortable and we're like, okay, I can handle this now. And then once we know we're in that space for a while, I'm not, it's then we maybe uh, can push ourselves a little, not push ourselves, but allow ourselves to take another
yeah,
step into our
yes,
fear,
yeah,
because there's always
yeah,
going to be something else then that we're fearful of, or that we're afraid to do,
yeah,
afraid that's
yeah.
like we're going to come undone, or afraid that we're going to mess it up. And
Mm,
like, and I say to that, and like I say to myself, because I still need to hear it too, that like that is part of the process. So if I'm only
mm,
afraid that I'm going to mess something up, messing it up is going to get me to do it the right way, or to do it like
yes,
the, get
yeah,
through it in with more, in a more evolved way. Or how should I say this? Like the hardest things are our greatest teacher, because if it's easy, then we're
yeah,
not really learning anything. If it's easy for us,
yeah.
if we're comfortable, if we're never scared of anything, then that, I
Mm,
feel like that means that we're living in a box. We're not stepping outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
And not to sound like cliche or whatever, but
No,
I just know
true.
that, you know, at some point I woke up and said, I did not come here to keep doing the same thing every day. I want
Mm,
like the most experience I can get out of this
mm,
lifetime. And it's not
yeah,
perfect. I'm not perfect. I fall back into my habits and my reactions and all of that. And then I offer myself grace and don't beat myself up like I used to, and just instead offer myself compassion, because I know I know that it's not always easy. And like
yeah,
the places that we operate from are a lot of times our wounds, and those wounds are deep. So no matter how much we heal, no matter how much we work on ourselves, no matter how much shadow work we do, whatever, you know, you want, however you want to frame it, there's always going to be more, and we're always going to be presented with opportunities to grow. If we want to accept those, we can just say,
yeah,
no, I don't want that. I'm just going to keep
yeah,
doing the same old. And that's fine if that's what you
mm,
want. But you know,
yeah,
I know that, like, sorry, I'm going on and on and on, but like, I think it's Marianne Williamson that says, like, we're our biggest fear is our great that we will reach our greatest potential. I'm paraphrasing, it's not the exact words, but that is our
yes,
biggest
yeah,
fear, because we know our soul knows our potential. So a lot of times we stuff that down and we don't want to hear it. And we think, no, that's just like, so we tune out all those intuitive nudges because we think
we
it's
do. Mm,
crazy, or people, what will people think? And I used to be, what will people think? That was my ego.
yes, yeah,
And
mm,
again, that still comes up sometimes, but I have to remind myself. But it's, you know, we're
it's,
afraid that we're going to reach our potential, and it, because it's scary, it's big, it's bigger than what we
mm,
can wrap our heads around.
it is, isn't it? Yeah, we are, and we are that powerful, aren't we?
Yeah,
That's the other thing. I think, a way that I look at that is we are scared of our success more than our failure,
yeah,
which
it's
people
so
find
true.
strange, but we are scared of how brilliant we are. That was what I feel sometimes. A lot of people are. They hold themselves back for that reason. But you're absolutely right about that fear is, it's always going to be there. It changes. We conquer one fear and then there's another one coming. And I feel like that now, as I say, I faced the three of my biggest fears: cancer, chemotherapy, losing my hair. And I go, yeah, great, done that, conquered that, proud of
Mm-hmm.
myself. But I know there's more coming. I know there's more coming. Those are sort of done for now. But actually, and then I think, but that again, I'm sort of okay with that, because that will be the next stage. That will be the next thing I need to face. That will be something else.
Yeah,
And again, like I say, it's continuous, isn't it? There's always going to be something. And that is, there's a little bit of me going, oh, what next? I'm quite excited about it in a way.
it,
But it is what other fears are coming, because I know all the time that I'm going through things, I am getting stronger and stronger, and that's what is lovely for people to be able to feel,
yeah.
isn't it? Well, I conquered that one. What next? It's sort of okay.
Yeah, like you just named it. Like, if you can, you know, move through those fears, those three fears you just named, like, and then you think about, like, what can't I do then? What else do I have
Yeah,
to be afraid of? If
yeah,
these were my biggest fears, and I've now been
yeah,
able to allow myself to move through it, and I'm comfortable with, you know, going through this process now, and then, like you said, that is like evident of your growth in that.
mm,
And then you know, the next step is something maybe you haven't thought of yet, that you don't know
yes.
what you
Don't
fear
know what I'm
or
scared
whatever.
of until
Yeah,
it hits me. It's a bit like what
what
next, but
next?
that's
Yeah.
okay. And it really is. And if you don't, I'm aware of our time because we do love to talk, don't we? But you've got another little bit that I'd like to just mention again, is like, life is about learning.
Hmm.
Stay curious and evolve. And again, it's in this wonderful chapter. I'm just trying to find the little bit. And it really is, again, just to, um, it's, we were and are always meant to evolve. The questions, the challenges, the hurdles, the twists and turns all ultimately get us to where we are right now, and will take us where we need to go next. And it really is. And again, that's
Hmm.
another little paragraph where you're talking about learning, evolving, that kind of thing. Every moment is an opportunity for our expansion, you say. And it really is, isn't
Yeah.
it? If we can look at it that way, it is quite exciting, isn't it? And it's something to embrace. I'm going to go through something that's scary, but I'm going to come out a different person. I'm going to have learnt something. I've evolved. And if we can stay curious, someone said to me years ago, and I love it so much, curiosity, and you say it, stay curious like a child. Curiosity keeps us young.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, so that's a good enough reason, if nothing else, isn't it, to stay curious and just to keep that open mind and open heart, and just say, what next? What's coming next with that?
What?
It is
Yeah,
childlike excitement, isn't it? Going, what next? I don't know. All might be really scary, but what
it
next?
is. That
That kind of thing.
I love that energy around it, like the childlike curiosity, and like it. That is, I feel like I needed to hear that because like curiosity is something it's not inherent to me, or if it was, I like suppressed that. I turned that um, dial down, like all through my upbringing, and was afraid to ask and be curious, and for various reasons.
Yeah.
But now it's like that. What you said, my words about like every moment being an opportunity for expansion. I truly believe that it can be big or small. Every moment, like we have an opportunity to either like just tune it out or to really take in, be present, and maybe choose something uh, for ourselves that's like loving ourselves versus abandoning ourselves. I mean, I think that's like part of what I was getting at in what when I said that, but I know it's much deeper than that. But it's a simple concept that every moment can
Yeah.
offer us something to help us grow if we're
Yes.
paying
Yeah.
attention. So
Yes, if we're open, yeah,
yeah,
definitely, definitely. And it's so, so important. And I feel, as I've said, I use this book in my way, and a lot of it is dipping in, dipping out, and it always tells me something I need to hear at the right time.
uh,
Now, this, as I say, is more what I call the story. You've got your poetry, which is all poetry. There's poetry in here too, isn't there? And the meditations. And I think, I mean, I've got all three, and that's lovely. But I really feel whatever one you want to dip into, that it's all there, isn't it? It's all there,
yeah.
just in a different format, so it is there. Do you want to tell people where's the best place for them to get your books? Because I'm
Well,
sure people will read them because they are so valuable to have. So where's
um,
the best place to go and get them?
thank you for that plug. I First of all, I want to say too that like I love hearing that. Like I think that's the biggest, most common feedback I'm getting from any of the books is like no matter, especially even the one that you're holding, the original where I tell my story
Mm,
and there's poetry, because the
yeah,
poetry kind of connects and takes you on my emotional ride through the experience, and so I'm asking you to process cognitively and
yeah.
emotionally
Mm,
while you're reading it. But like you said, you can dip in, you can open up a
mm,
page and like hear what you need to hear. And I feel like that's a common
yeah,
thing. And I'm so happy because that is what I wanted it to be, although I didn't necessarily know that at the time. And so anyways, long story to get to where you can get my books. You can go to my website. Um, Actually, they're all available on Amazon worldwide, but if you want to find other ways to purchase them, you can go to my website. This is trishcampbell.com. Look under books in the menu, and there's various ways you can buy them, either through Amazon, Indigo, Barnes and Noble, or you can order through your local bookstore. I appreciate that greatly.
mm,
And if you have read it, if you would leave me a review, because I'm doing this the grassroots way and getting the word out. So I just
mm,
appreciate, like, again, we started these conversations because you wanted to go deeper into what you were reading and
yes,
have the opportunity to talk to an actual author of the book that you're
yes,
reading.
yes.
And
I'm so
and I
lucky.
love that
That's
because,
the
yeah,
curiosity.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is
I wanted
curiosity.
to ask the questions, didn't I? And I got to ask you directly, so we thought we'd share it, didn't we? So
Yeah,
that's where this stemmed from, isn't it? So, and I'm so glad that we're doing this.
yeah, me too. I'm so grateful. And talking about it is taking that step further of not just like reading ourselves and keeping it to ourselves what we're reading, but like once we start talking about it, it opens up the conversation and opens up
Yeah,
for other people to do the same and talk about it and talk about these harder things
yeah,
that we go through in life. So I'm just,
mm,
yeah, very grateful
yeah,
that
and
we're doing this.
Yeah, and it is, and again, that's evolving, isn't it? This is how this has evolved. Our
Yeah.
Zoom deeper discussion that we do
Yes.
once a month, more around the full moon time, don't we?
Yeah.
That is exactly that, isn't it? Where people can share more and do more. It's a private conversation, a group conversation that actually has evolved into being very, very healing and very powerful, hasn't it? So,
It
and
has.
we didn't set out to do that, did we,
I
Trish?
mean,
It
I
just
think we just, yeah, we wanted people to have a space not in public to share what they're going through with relative to what we're talking about. And then
yeah,
it's like every month it's been so magical. We started doing that last August, and now so we're approaching a year.
yes, yeah,
And every
amazing.
month it's like different when we do it. Different people show up. Some of the, and we have like some that have been there from the beginning and have had like huge transformations and openings and releases from these sharing in the group setting that we
Yeah,
have. Um, and it's always just like, I feel like the right people show up and the right messages are heard by the right
yeah,
people. And like, we never know how it's going to go, but it's always so beautiful and
it always
magical.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's lovely. So keep an eye out on our Instagram and everywhere. Follow us, and we'll find out when the next one is for that, because I know it's around the full moon. Off the top of my head, can't remember
I
when we
think
were
it's in
doing
the
it.
first week of July, but yeah, I'll
Yeah,
post about it.
but yeah, keep an eye. We'll tell you when it's happening if you want to join us for
Yeah.
that one. And obviously you're on Instagram. That's where we are doing this now, aren't we? So people
Yeah.
can find you there. Your words of wisdom. You share lots of words of wisdom all the time, which I would encourage anyone to follow you on social media as well. And
And
this is Trish Campbell. That's what you are all
this
over
is
the
Trish
place,
Campbell
isn't it?
everywhere. Yeah,
Lovely.
thank you for that. And I also want to say too that people can find you, Calmer Self on all the Calmer Self method on Instagram and Calmer Self all the other platforms. And you have such a vast array of meditations on your YouTube, and you also have a meditation shop for people for guided meditations. I use them all the time. You have a one to like for nighttime and one for greeting the day in the morning that I especially love, and so many others that if you haven't stepped into meditation, or if you have, a guided meditation is like the perfect entry point for meditation. And with Nadine's beautiful voice, and the way that she does it is so powerful. And then you have that gorgeous music in the background, and
Yes,
they're
yes, I've got that.
accessible for everybody, and you can have it on your phone, so it's you can take it with you.
Yes, you can. Yeah, that's how people access things, isn't it? And there is one actually in the meditation shop. Thank you for mentioning that. That actually is perfect for what we started talking about, the balance and boundaries.
Yeah.
Tuning into nature, the lovely nettle, and about balance and boundaries. That's very quick and very simple, but it helps you tune in. So yes, please do take a look. And my YouTube channel, these chit chats go on there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a playlist of these chit chats, so you can catch up with all the things that we've been chatting about. So many topics we've covered so far, haven't we, Trish? So do go and look, and I know you've got them on your YouTube as
Well,
well,
mine's
haven't
a
you?
little
So,
bit behind, but I made a promise to myself this week that this weekend I'm going to get them caught up. So I got to
oh,
follow
they're
through
there,
on that.
they're
But yeah,
there. But you will share them. They're on your Instagram, aren't
yeah,
they?
they are.
But it's really just, I do appreciate anyone that takes the time to listen to what we're chatting about. But there is
Yes.
a lot there, isn't there? And sometimes it's dipping in, like I do with your books, dipping into a podcast or a conversation or something. Sometimes it's just what you need to hear at the time, isn't it? So
Yeah.
so that's the way I do things like that. I listen to things. So I know they're on video, but you can just
You
listen,
can
can't
just
you? So
listen.
that
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So I love what we've talked about today, Trish. It's had a really, really lovely feeling for me and done me the
Yeah,
world of
me
good.
as
So thank
well.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I,
Thank,
I can't
thank,
believe how fast the time flew by. But I
I
guess
know.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who's joined in.
Yes,
As
thank you.
always, if you've got any questions, put them in the comments. Me and Trish always look, don't we? And we
Yes.
will answer you. So if you listen to this on replay, then do comment. And we love to hear what you've got to say and anything. If you want to be curious and ask us questions, then please do.
Yeah, and if you catch this on the replay, you can always comment in the comment section on Facebook or Instagram. And yeah, we just want to hear from you and what you want us
Yeah.
to chat about. So the next
Mm,
time, and can't wait to do this again, Nadine.
definitely. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Trish.
thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye bye then.
Bye for now.